So one of the things that April you'd covered, which I thought was fascinating, is that you had a conversation about scaling the unscalable, which reminds me of a joke. How do you eat an elephant? In the back.
One bite at a time.
It's true, one bite at a time. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how to build agile models. And I think this is a framework that can allow businesses, and especially founder-led businesses, to eat those elephants. So my name is Justin Liu. I'm the Consumer Marketing and Digital Director for Distill Ventures. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Distill Ventures to start off, then jump into, I think people remember things best in threes. So in that mean, start with something really simple, build it up so that it's a little bit more advanced, and then talk about a real case scenario in terms of how you can scale businesses through an agile model. So a little bit about Distill Ventures. Distill Ventures is the world's first accelerator dedicated to premium spirit brands and non-alcoholic spirits. So if you roam the halls, you may have seen a few of the brands that we work with, and they're all founder-led brands. And when you enter our program, you get cash, our expertise, and then mentoring. And this is under one big premise. Like, we believe that founder-led brands make the most interesting brands in the industry. So when you start if you go to distillventures.com, you can see some of the brands that we work with, really fascinating businesses, from non-alcoholic spirit brands such as Ritual Zero Proof, all the way to our New World whiskey brands, Danish whiskey that's just coming to the United States called Stouning, all the way to Australia, and you look at Starward whiskey. So lots of different brands that we work with. And we've committed over $120 million to 15 brands over the past 9 years. So we're putting our money where the mouth is. So when we talk about acceleration, we believe that the competitive advantage of founder-led brands really lies in the fact that they're small, so talking about their overall scale, and the structure of those businesses. And I like to equate it to the difference between the boat on the left, which when you look at that boat, that's a cigarette racing boat. It has 8 V8 engines, and it can go 80 miles an hour on the water, which is really fast. If you're in Miami, you can take a look at those. It's pretty amazing. On the left, that is Evergreen's A-class container ship. That can go, instead of 80 miles an hour, go 26 miles an hour, but it can carry 24,000 containers. So massive, massive machine. On the left, founder-led brands. On the right, you have multinational companies that, basically when you look at our industry, they lie on both sides. Cigarette racing boat, super agile, but they have few resources. So it's really important that they work with various accelerators, they get the experience in order to continue to move forward. They're quick, they have quick decision making, and then they also have a very fast innovation cycle. When you look at the container ship on the right, they're behemoths, right? They're heavily well-resourced in terms of cash, in terms of people, and knowledge. So you think about the large conglomerates in their industry, they have all those things. But the gap that they have is that they are not agile. And this is a very simple framework that we follow at Distill Ventures, where you have an overall objective, then you go into the test, measure, learn, optimize, scale, and then scale. So within this process, you have your one objective. What are you trying to accomplish? Well, so say you're trying to drive loyalty with your consumer. What do you think about doing? You're like, okay, we're going to have an email marketing campaign that we're going to reach our consumer, and we're going to get them to buy more. Well, how are you going to do that? Have a couple of different audiences you look at, a couple of different messages that you start putting out, and then you slowly tweak that circle, optimize until you get to a certain area where it can scale. The focus there is putting slight resources, and this is, I think, where the big challenge is within that larger companies face. Generally, you have an annual planning cycle. You sit there and you go, okay, we're going to put a bunch of resources against this. And we know what we're going to do from January 1st to December 31st. When you start looking at small companies, they have the ability to go, okay, let's look at this by month, by week, and say, how are we going to optimize, make little bets, and then go large later? So to sum up this process, here's a paid social. So I know a lot of you're probably dealing in the paid social world. You're trying to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And we'll be sending this out so you don't have to take pictures. But overall, understand what your objective is. We're going to have a paid social campaign. We're going to, in the end, try to drive sales. The areas that we look at are, 1, looking at your overall audience. 2, understand what creative works with that audience. And then 3, what copy drives conversion. So understanding that, you can go down this process of going, okay, what audience is the most reactive? Who likes our message? Who likes our product? 2, what creative works? Are you sending out images of drink shots, people at picnic tables drinking your product and lifestyle? What exactly works? For various audiences, creative might not work for that person. And then finally, copy. I think this is where you start looking at and going, what copy actually drives that person to purchase the product? So even if you just open up your phone and you go look through Instagram and you're like, okay, oh, that's an interesting thing. You can actually go through this process through paid social in order to scale. And that's the end goal, is then you inform online scale campaigns to drive sales. But that's all in the means of understanding and trying to drive conversion. There can be other things that you're focusing on, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but for brands that are sold and you can now buy direct to consumer, this is a lot of what people focus on. I'd actually say one level above would be driving awareness for those brands. And then this is something that probably comes 6 to 8 months later, after you're starting to get some awareness with a specific consumer group. Now we're going to go into a case for Ritual Zero Proof. So Ritual Zero Proof is one of the brands within our portfolio, and they've done an amazing job in terms of following this Agile framework. So founded in 2019, Ritual is a non-alc spirits brand that's a one-to-one replacement for your spirits. So say you want a daiquiri, you can purchase their rum, make a fantastic cocktail. This is a brand that's really good to highlight, primarily because they're in the non-alc space, they're sold on Amazon, you can buy them on their Shopify site, so they get a ton of data. And while I can't share the actual data with you, I could share with you some of the methodology on what they did. So from to, and then, from to standpoint, where they went with their audience, what they did with their media mix, and then what they did with their creative. So for the audience, they basically developed ads, and if you think about the non-alc space, you're like, okay, who are we going to target? And they're like, oh, well, how about sober curious, yoga moms, maybe CrossFitters? So they looked at these different contextual audiences, and they're like, who works best? What they noticed over time is ad performance started declining. And they're going through this process once a week, and they're seeing video completion rates that weren't very successful. You're looking at click-through rates on native ads declining, and then your cost per acquisition and return on sale on display ads declined. What they ended up doing is going to an AI model. So instead of saying, okay, we're going to find these people that we think would be interested in us, and they went to AI algorithm-based model through the meta world, so Facebook, Instagram, and they started picking out the best and most fruitful consumers. So that was one change from an audience standpoint. From a media mix standpoint, this is something I find fascinating. So who here is aware of what happened with iOS 14 changes? So there's 4 people. So just to explain what happened was when you downloaded iOS 14, every time you got an app, it said, do you want to be tracked or do you not want to be tracked? Well, 96% of consumers said, I don't want to be tracked. What does that happen? Basically what happens there is that what used to be a really fruitful way of getting to your consumer and driving conversion became really inefficient. So to the point where brands are like, what's happening with our sales? Sales are declining. We're not reaching people. Our cost per acquisition is going up. Ritual saw that, and they're like, our cost per acquisition is going up. What do we do about it? The big shift there, and I think I give the brand a lot of credit, they basically said, okay, we need to take, rather than just focus on paid social, we're going to go to a full funnel approach. We're going to start working on driving awareness at the top and doing it in a more traditional way. So they end up using programmatic advertising as a way to circumvent and get away from the paid world. And then from creative. So the Ritual marketing team, they all cut their teeth in the advertising world. And when you're in the advertising world, your perspective is, okay, I'm going to create a 30-second ad, and then I'm going to cut them down when I need it. Or I have a 60-second ad, and I'm going to put this in this one location, it'll be great. What they found was that a broad range of placements, like these video completions, these click-throughs, were not happening. And they realized very quickly that their ads were not working. I think in the non-alc space, there's a company called Drink No and Low, and they've done a fantastic job in terms of creating contextually relevant ads and content that doesn't feel like ads. It's in the right space. They're not cut downs of traditional advertising. And basically, Ritual went and changed their creative approach to say, okay, if we're going to advertise on Meta or Instagram, we're going to have a specific ad. We're going to have a specific ad for every placement we have. If we're going to do any pre-roll, that's going to be specific. So they basically base their creative on the media buy. Let's go to the next page. So here are the results. So it's all great to say, okay, you made these changes, and every week or two they're revising how they're going to market. They're revising how they're talking to the consumer. When you see the organic social, and I think this is an interesting thing where it's like organic social reach is increasing, and that's the chart on the left, and the DTC revenue has increased the same rate, basically. This is basically saying that as you're going out, refining, reaching more consumers with your message, you're not seeing a decline. You're seeing that continued increase. That's exactly what you want to see from your business. And they've built a very successful brand doing this. So every year since launch in 2019, revenue has more than doubled. They have a quarter, or 25%, of the non-alc spirits market. And then they have 31% share on Amazon, which is double the competitor. So they've been extremely successful. And a lot of this is due to this Agile framework that they have developed from a marketing standpoint in terms of test, learn, and then optimize and scale. So a couple tips. I think this is something that's really important for founders to understand. One is build a culture of rapid integration and continuous feedback. So as you start going through, and it has to be cultural because you're basically organizationally integrating something cross-functionally where it's not like the marketing person's like, okay, I'm going to do this, but everyone within the organization has to understand, here's how we're working, here's how we're tweaking, whether it's from your P mix, whether it's from, everything can change. So as long as you build this in and build this idea of test, learn in order to scale, makes a lot of sense for the brands. Two, have a clear sense of what you're looking to accomplish and make decisions based on that. So if you're trying to focus on, hey, we want to overall drive conversion, and that's at the bottom of the funnel, well, have everything linked to that, but start building your funnel up. And this is where it goes to 3. Follow the 70% rule. And I always you hear this term a lot, move fast and break things. I think one thing that you can always run into, and one of the challenges, if you don't follow the 70% rule and you're like, you want to be perfect, well, you may be doing the opposite of being agile. You may actually sit there and cause a lot of challenges within the organization, trying to make sure everything's perfect. 70% is good enough. Continue to optimize. And I think one of the things that within this, as you're going through the process of test, learn, optimize, look for the 5%. Don't look for the 10% increases. Lots of 5% increases if you follow the rule of 72. which means like if you take the number and divide by 72, you can double your number. So 36 takes 2 years to double the business. Lots of 5% work way better than trying to spend a lot of time getting these 10% wins. The last one is the last tip. So don't solely focus on conversion. I know I've been talking a lot about conversion here just because it's the easiest thing for us to measure as you look at the funnel. The challenge with looking at overall conversion is you start looking at your cost per acquisition. And when you're a new brand, cost per acquisition and you continue to refine, continue to raise. And you'll sit there and go, okay, I need to pull money out of this system. This is not working. Well, that's probably not the place where you should start. So from the business, start with the overall awareness build of your business and start working your way down to conversion, because that'll happen. So, we work with some companies that are starting to build media mix models. And in fact, like 80% or 70 to 80% of their dollars should be going towards awareness building activities versus driving conversion. So it's understanding, build the demand, then drive for conversion. What I've included in the last slide, just because I talked a lot of acronyms, is just, these 9 acronyms that honestly I think that everyone should understand and know, and go, okay, what's the cost per click? Well, what does that mean? And just to break it down, so you're like, hey, here's our cost per acquisition or interaction, and then it goes all the way down to AOV, is your average order value. So download this, you can take a look at it, post it up, and say, okay, here are the 9. I would have put 10, but I think these 9 work. So thank you for your time.